I didn't know who I was anymore.
Yeah.
I just, I was good at what I did. I paid attention to all the rules. I paid attention to all the people, but yet I came from a place where this wasn't true. Where was the marriage of integrity and wellness to what I actually did every day? And why didn't I feel good? Why don't you just go with the flow? I've heard that a million times.
Mm-hmm.
Just go with the flow. You're already so successful, Marlena. Why are you stirring up the shit? Why are you doing this? And I'm not doing anything to anyone. I'm just living my truth. And my truth doesn't include anyone on any level getting hurt that I can do something about. Now,
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you're new here. I'm laughing because I did this to Dr. Marlena Jbara, who is here with us today. As I do with many guests, we have a wonderful discussion that we should have invited you to. We're inviting you to it now. But before we do, in front of us, again, we have today Dr. Marlena Jbara. She is a diagnostic radiologist who specializes in foot and ankle. She's also known as Dr. Locomotion. She can describe that a little better than I just did. But I know her as a very deep soul, very loving, compassionate light in this world. I couldn't wait to host her on this channel and share her with you. She just did a TEDx talk where she talks about the concept of belonging, especially in healthcare, where there are many silos and a lot of specializations, which can often lead us into more competition and less connection. We'll dive into that topic today, but before we do, Marlena, thank you so much for joining me.
thank you so much, Jillian, for having me. This is really special for me to be included in your great word.
Yeah, and included is such a fantastic word to use when we'll be talking about belonging. And for those people, I think it's so important for people to hear other people's stories, to feel the connection, to get to know a little bit about you. And I'd love if you could share some of your story with the audience and again, myself today.
When I got to medicine, I had this idea that I was going to wear a white coat and I was going to be safe. I was going to be secure. I would have enough money. I'd have a certain amount of respect, and all the things that had been part of my past would go away, that I would get somewhere worth getting to. And that goes back to my early childhood. I had a very rough life early on. I had my parents unfortunately suffered from mental illness, and I was one of those kids who was always in someone else's house. I was nobody's child, and I pretty much was couch surfing most of my early life. And that led me down all sorts of pathways, all sorts of misdirections. I got into drugs. I got into all sorts of messes. And when I came up for air around the age of 12, I found myself in drug rehab. And it was during those years that I began to understand how things work, that the way, there's many things I learned at that time besides just communication and things like that, but just routine structure and how to gain accomplishment in your life. Basic things that many children might find from their own parents I didn't have, which I think is more pervasive than meets the eye. So children who had not really been parented were trying to parent themselves like me.
Mhm.
And when I came out of that, I decided I'm going to be a doctor. I'm never going to be hungry again. I'm not going to have to steal. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to do any of the, I'm going to have a home.
Mhm.
And that really led me down, a goal to becoming a physician. And it was very unlikely from where I was sitting at the time that I would get there. But I was really lucky to have amazing mentorship and have a lot of resolve and belief that this was going to set me free. And in those years, very happy years, all the way through getting to medical school. And then when I got to become to medical school and through those years, there was this hidden curriculum, and none of us really talked about it. When I went into medical school, that was 1996. There were probably about 40% of women also. This was just becoming a time where women were achieving some level, but it wasn't really like that in the water. I had to come at 4 o'clock in the morning, get coffee for everyone. I was the scut monkey of the day, is what we call whoever was on that rotation. And, you just made everyone like you. So gone were my values that I learned in drug rehabilitation of integrity and trusting my environment. This was about tracking towards success now, doing whatever it took and learning a million details about how wellness works, like the actual business of medicine. So there's the business of medicine, all the education I have to get, and all the people that I have to serve to get to it. And that I immediately seamlessly slipped back right into a relapse of pleasing all of these people, not thinking for myself anymore, just being liked. And that had a toll and a price. That had a price in the relationships of the day, that had a price in the wellness that we saw. I did my residency and education in downstate in inner city Brooklyn, where you really served some patients that had serious issues. HIV was rampant at the time, and I saw a lot of pain. But the business of medicine was still rocking hard. Who you liked and who you knew got you to the next step. Yeah. And those were things that live out today, that there's another way medicine works, where everyone is fancy in corporate suits and doing all their business of medicine. And then there's the people who are carrying the weight of all the wellness and trying to help people. So there's different worlds. But not to confuse myself, the thing that I began to see was that I didn't know who I was anymore. Yeah. I was good at what I did. I paid attention to all the rules. I paid attention to all the people, but yet I came from a place where this wasn't true. Where was the marriage of integrity and wellness to what I actually did every day? And why didn't I feel good? I just felt like, for all that I did, the early signs of burnout were early in my career. It's just futile. It's just everything you do, nothing's going to change the way it is. You're just stuck. And as I became more seasoned inside of medicine, I started to open up more that no one's really talking about what's really wrong here. And, I'm just taking my paycheck and going home and doing my little life. And this is not what I signed up for. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to feel I was giving. And the only place I felt that was in education. That was where educating another physician, showing them how to eke out your own life and be true to yourself through my, that small interaction. And it became, more and more difficult to deal with the powers that be when it didn't seem like the administration of medicine was really moving towards wellness. Besides the fact that, I personally, had experienced sexual harassment and I felt bullied throughout the course of medicine. I remember someone saying to me, there was a picture of Van Gogh, the potato famine, on the wall. And the person that was reprimanding me asked me to look at the picture and ask what I saw. And I said, I see these people sitting around drinking coffee. And he says, yeah, don't stir the shit. Just like that. Just leave it just like that. Just drink your coffee and be quiet. And that was nothing compared to what I really dealt with, which, is behind a gag order. But I really felt that, I'm not happy here. And my relationship showed it, my relationships at home. I wasn't able to be the kind of parent I wanted to be, the kind of partner I want to be. A lot of things in medicine, I think people really, whether you deal with it and you argue about it or you learn to just have it be okay. But this is not what you came to life for. You came to life to be rejuvenated and to be to bring yourself to life each day, to renew the joy of giving and taking and, being in community with others. And that it was non-existent. You just kept your mouth shut and kept going.
I had a strong physical reaction to you being silenced and oppressed. And I'm grateful that you just shared that story and are using your voice to the best of your capacity right now and honoring your true self. And so much insight just came up there. As you said, I looked around and you had a choice to completely abandon who you are, which you felt the consequences of that. And we'll talk a little bit more about coming back to yourself and the concept of belonging that, you've mentioned is so important. And we could look at it, and sometimes, again, that learned helplessness. So I'm in marriage and family therapy program right now for my master's, and I'm currently in a module about domestic violence and the intimate partner violence. And people from cultures that one individual is consistently the oppressed and has to kind of make themselves small, they can normalize that we just are the abused and oppressed, and that's normalized. Often we see that in patriarchal societies. And so if you stand up for yourself, especially as a woman, that's looked at as a problem, as somebody who's stirring up conflict for some cultures, not all. And part of the learning, and from my own personal experience and observations from lessons I've had in my own life, are that if people have constantly been abused, they feel like that's what they deserve. Their self-worth is so low that to accept love, which we've talked about before, to actually accept love and compassion, there's this averse reaction to it. Like, I am not worthy of that, and this repulsion. And so if a person is at that place where they feel that they deserve this abuse that you just pointed out is wrong, they may not have gotten to the point that you just did, which is to share like that, not okay. So for people who are in situations where they think, that's just what I deserve, that person's right, and that person's words silence them, we hear you, we see you, and what can they do about it? What do you recommend as a next step?
I think that self-awareness. Now, I didn't just come out to be someone who can speak on that. I actually endured it, and I kept thinking that if I just do things the way other people do them, my career would be better. So at first, none of these, it all happened the way I shared with you, but I didn't exactly have the insight that I wanted to change anything early on. I got to medicine like everybody else. I want to, do this right. I want to belong. There must be a group out here that we belong. Where's that group? Can you show
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
And I kept on going and doing more. Even the idea to educate the podiatrists or to make a curricula for them was more about showing my own value. Look, everyone, I have value and I can do this for you, and or we can do it together. And doesn't, this was all sort of trying to fit in whatever way it took. I wasn't really aware of my own wounds, how they were bleeding through. I thought that since I had handled a lot of my life early on, that now I'm okay, and now I'm here. So the next layers to learn weren't clear to me until I started to get, I guess, the confidence to ask those questions and to start to push back. That's when things started to get more rocky. And I realized that, oh, wait, I have some things to learn here. There's some people that are, they're right about me, and that there's something here that I'm not just like everyone else, just keeping quiet. I'm bothered by this. And it kept coming up, and it caused a lot of struggles between me and administrators or me and other people. And I went inside myself for a while, and I learned a lot more about myself. I did a lot of programs to learn about empathy and compassion, compassionate inquiry, started studying about internal family systems, started looking at different programs of wellness all around, and spent, I would say, a good 5 years just studying hard on what it takes to be human. And with that, when I was coming back into the medical systems, I had never left. When I just, my viewpoint started coming back into it, thinking, well, where do I really belong here? I felt like I grew myself up. So where should people look? I would say first look inside yourself. Self-care was not part of my everyday. I mean, it looked that way. I had meal prep and I had this and I had that, but it was all functionally to get to work, to do an amazing job, to bring home that paycheck to my family, and to make vacations. It was a very simple creation. It didn't have the part with, well, what do you want to do as a human? Like, what are you doing here? You can do anything you want. Each of us is empowered and powerful.
Yeah.
What are you doing? So this self-reflection gave me the insight to stop making stories about the way it was, and to start to own my own story. And I was not able to suck it down any longer. I could not hold my breath anymore when people were saying things that were oppressing others in front of me. I questioned that. And they were, again, people were backed up. Like, what, why don't you just go with the flow? I've heard that a million times.
Mm-hmm.
Just go with the flow. You're already so successful, Marlena. Why are you stirring up the shit? Why are you doing this? And I'm not doing anything to anyone. I'm just living my truth. And my truth doesn't include anyone on any level getting hurt that I can do something about. So I think first it starts with yourself. Reflect on yourself before you go out and try to change systems. Because if you don't do that, you might change it to something that's just equally as poor as the first thing you chose. I've done it myself. I thought I was fixing one thing here. Here's the fix. And then the second morph of that is worse than the first. So it takes time. And also find mentors that have those qualities of integrity and compassion. Very hard to find, not just people you like, but people who have shown that they have the capacity to have that kind of, weight on their shoulders and yet still be who they are, be a leader. I was lucky. I found a few mentors.
Yeah, I had the book The Way of Integrity close to me. I must have just moved it, but that's what was,
Martha,
yeah. Well, I just got my master coach certification today. So you're here with me, and it's ironic because Martha was there at our retreat today. So for you to speak so loudly and for that to be the theme of the day in such a deep way, it's what I heard was, you overcame so much from your early life. And the fact that you had so much to lose when it comes to knowing where you've already overcome. For me, where I don't shut up and color anymore is because I was on my deathbed, but it took 5 years after I was in a hospital told I wouldn't make it. It took 5 years to even speak my truth out loud because of the guilt and shame about that part of my life. And so when it comes to you sharing, it's so important because there are other people, maybe they are coping with addiction right now. There's nothing wrong with them. That's a canary in the coal mine. I believe, my personal belief, is that showing often where it has been normalized to abandon our true self, to get out of our integrity, but the cost is so high. A lot of people call it burnout. Again, I'll say moral injury. There's a lot of PTSD that's being undiagnosed. There's so much trauma when you abandon, especially your core values and your authentic truth. And I heard you say there was some point of which you said, enough is enough. I can't do this. What did that take for you?
the final straw for me. So I'm someone who can take a lot of pain. I can just keep going and giving. I have had a lot of years, I think, being neglected as a child and having all of the different roads. It wasn't clear to me until after COVID, after I had served on the front lines. For me, I fell down and I was in such a difficult situation at work that I was afraid to call out. I felt that I was going to be in trouble. And I kept going to work and I was in so much pain. And my son would be like, why don't you just go to the doctor? Like, you're in a lot of pain. And it was 5 days of this before I went to the doctor. And when I finally went, I had a fracture of my spine. Like I was doing injections on other people, trying to handle the business of the day, all because I was afraid that I would be in trouble by my boss, that somehow this was not good. And that's when I realized you are burned out. Like you're not taking care. It is time for you to come out of this for all of these reasons, no more excuses, and do something for you. And I had to close what I was doing in the way I was doing it in that work environment and have the courage not only to handle myself in that time, but also to open up my own shingle and decide, you know what, you're good enough for what you're doing. You're going to do it. You're going to be a 1099 is what they call in medicine, where you're going to be, I'm my own MD PLLC. And I'm going to handle what contracts I want to do. And I'm going to do to the level I can be. So I was terrified to leave the organization of medicine the way it is and go out on my own and do all of these same things, teach transformation, build communities, do all of the things that I loved inside of medicine. I was not sure I could do that, but it took seeing that I was hurt and I couldn't care for myself to realize you're just playing that game too. And in order for you to get well, you really need to come out and admit that this is not the time. That's not the space. And you're not going to win whatever game you're playing. I'm hurting myself. So it was the pressures and the realization and the owning of I've had enough. And for some people, this looks worse than that. They have cancer. They finally realize in medicine that they've been in this hamster wheel and then all of a sudden they're really ill. Or maybe they get divorced and their life falls down and they're like, they don't see how, or their family systems are breaking up. But there was a real realization for me that there's something wrong here. And no matter how, and this, I was at the sort of the top of my game. I was, head of DEI. I was transforming doctors' lives, teaching people about compassion and empathy. And here I was, myself, not able to care for myself. But again, so I saw that we all try to look good, including me. But there's something to that. I constantly need a clearing around it, a practice every day to find my floor. I need people that help me find that, like you. The day I was giving that TED talk when you met me and you helped me clear all my fears and insecurities, for someone who, like me, who is already successful, who already, my opinion, makes surgeries happen, to have that, I have to get something of a free way to think clearly for myself, unencumbered by my own negative inner child, or the critical parent, or all of the things that are at play for every single person every single day. I really fear people who kind of say, I'm fine.
Yeah.
We're fine as we create it. We're fine every day as we create it. I can trust that I know how to be fine, but the creation of it is still my work every single day, just like it's my children's work, my parents, all the people, right? We all have to be creating it every day, so that you can't sit on your laurels like, oh, I got that figured out. Just like when I was 12, when I said I want to be a doctor and I thought this was going to be it for me. That is not the way it is for people in medicine. For people in medicine, in fact, I believe that many of us come to medicine as a wounded healer in our blind spot. You may not realize it because you've got it so well handled, but there's going to be a moment where you're up against something and you want to give yourself all the love and time and patience it takes to deal with whatever it is that's true for you. And for many of us at these high levels of the game, it can be hard to admit, and it's very hard to admit that you need help and time and you can't keep going this way. Well, you could, but you wind up killing yourself, as many physicians unfortunately do. And I think that this is always a risk in medicine, that being a wounded healer who's not actually dealing with your own wounds at the intersection of your patient and their wounds, there's a lot of problems that can occur. And that's where I think we're not seeing wellness.
Yeah.
Wellness is going to be not for not only your patient who's coming to you blindly, please help me, but you needed to handle your own wellness all the way through to get there, to be there for them. You have an even bigger responsibility to handle because you're helping others. So that's in it of a nutshell. I think that owning the fact that we're all flawed and we all have a struggle in life and we're all going and have the capacity to overcome takes integrity and admitting that this isn't working for me. Even though parts of it might work for me, it's not all working for me. And that's the life. I mean, I choose to create workability in every area of my life.
Yeah, and you're so spot on. So my niche is head and neck cancer. And oftentimes when people get diagnosed with cancer, as you mentioned, there's this demoralization. And for me, with the life-threatening illness, it happened just like you said. And I had suicidality as a surgical resident, particularly when I faced that everything I had thought would bring me value and worthiness wasn't. I didn't feel more fulfilled when I had gotten to where I thought I would feel that fulfillment and contentment. And when people face that, as you mentioned, about physician suicide, or it could be a point for me. I had to accept the reality of I'm here. I was given more than a second chance to do over. And I kept, like you said, I didn't do the inner work enough. So I kept repeating, I kept hitting the rock bottom. I kept hitting life-threatening illness. And I said, why am I still here? How did I survive? And I had survivor's guilt and all this stuff because I went to Western medicine for the answers. But the system and what it has to offer isn't at a spiritual level. It's not at a whole person level. The things that matter in terms of deep moral values are often things we're told not to talk about. Religion, we don't want to offend anybody. But these are exactly the topics that need to happen, not only for the patients, but for the caregivers, not meaning just the caregivers in the patient's life, but the healthcare professionals who are caring, the healers, as you mentioned, the wounded healer. And we all are patients, right? We're not just the physicians, the doctors, the healthcare professionals. We all are humans. We're all spiritual beings. We are deeply impacted. And I think because of this evolutionary need to be part of a community, people abandon themselves to fit in and to create, our culture does this performance-based identity. And we were just fed all this bull crap about what it takes to have meaning and purpose in this world. Our value is in RVUs. And there's a hierarchy. I was in the military, there's a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy in medicine. We're always saying who's better than who, where do I fit? This constant angst of not doing enough. This is a constant theme. I'm never enough. And we keep trying and trying and trying. And like you said, when does that end?
No, it's a very complicated thing because a lot of times the audience that you're looking at is your direct management, and they're part of a bigger part of the cycle. And as someone, I grew up not really, my religious background was fragmented. I was born as a Jew, and my parents being what they were, I didn't learn much in that track, but I would go to many different religions to look to see what those families are doing, because I would always, there's a Sunday picnic, I'll eat there. This is my early childhood. And I gave all that up through my teens and 20s. And it wasn't until I started, I'm part of the adult children of dysfunctional families. And that it's a step program. And I really advocate for any step program. I advocate especially for the adult children of dysfunctional families because I kind of feel that they ask, one of the steps is giving up your truth to a higher power. I really still struggle with this because it's so hard for me to trust in anything beyond me. But there's a limit to what I can do where I, at some point, say, I got to give it up to something bigger than me. That there's a forgiveness and a renewal that no matter what you've done, and no matter what you've done, there's a day after, and there's another day, and there's another way. And I really believe in that cycling of myself from where I've been. I've seen myself do things I wouldn't want to repeat, or you might judge me for, but I believe that's inside of each and every one of us. For sure. More people lie at first glance than tell the truth. And that's just, you may not know it or want to hear it, but that's the truth. And where does that come from? Very interestingly, it comes from us. And without a clarity and without a clearing every day, a sharing to another human being, we can really go way off the deep end or way away from our moral compass. And I don't believe any person who's ever hurt me or ever bullied me or ever, inflicted any kind of pain on me wanted to. It's not in their blind spot. It's in their blind spot as well, why they're acting that way. Because from my experience in many groups and many people, loving each other is the most renewable, nourishing source of feeling your own love and joy. There seems to be no other way I've ever felt. Like, I mean, of course, you feel good when you've accomplished something, but it's in the act of love that self-love really starts to juice up and well, that when you're really giving freely of your truth without worrying about anything, that you can be amazing. And that's where I think I just tap into that as much as I can in every capacity of my life, and had done that as a physician. Even with these things that occur, we can still emerge. Like I would come to a patient that needed my help, and I would feel that immediate sense of renewal, of love, and finding that everywhere has been my journey. I love my students. I still train doctors, bone and joint radiologists from all over the world. And what an honor to have them ask me my opinion and share. And the things that I share nowadays, besides, this is the anatomy and that ligament you need, is, did you drink your drink today? Did you eat your lunch? Have you given yourself time? Did you go to the bathroom?
Mm-hmm.
This is really like reminding people of their own basic needs, is just a refreshing kiss. It's like your mom kisses you before, you hope for that mom who kisses you as you go out the door. That's just as important as knowing what that anatomy is.
Hmm.
To
Yeah.
me, you can be an athlete in this. Like, there's no limit. And thank you, Jillian, for devoting your life to helping people, because what you've done to be who you are is not the pathway that millions of people face. Many people like me, we got to a point, I'm going to be a doctor. This is it. I'm staying there. I'm happy. And you give up your joy and your life, and you wonder, you wonder why later on you're not happy. But I really appreciate that you're carving out the path for people to see this is the direction. Um, it's no small thing that you've taken on, and you are going to help millions of people. You do help millions of people.
I
Thank you.
feel I feel like I could have put a mirror right there because that's how I perceive you. It's exactly what I perceive you just mentioned, is that you're taking the lessons you needed and you're sharing them with the residents. You're aware of that judge, and you have so much insight because you have taken that time for the compassionate self-inquiry and to hold accountability. At first we talk about blaming outside, and it's easier to project blame and judgments. And it's harder, as you mentioned earlier, to actually allow ourselves to see how those judgments are a reflection of how we feel about ourselves, and how bullies are showing us their insecurities, where they are projecting on us what they are judging themselves for. And we can provide unconditional love without unconditional tolerance of other people's behaviors. Say, I see you. That is a reflection of what's going on for you. Whatever it brings up for me is a reflection of what's going on for me. And I can own that part while keeping distance from the pain, because as a person who has been in pain, I know I've hurt people when hurt people hurt people.
Yes, very much so. And we really don't really see it. And it's not something you could just fix. It's something you have to experience. You have to actually experience it and then get curious about what's actually happening for you now. But the power of dissociation for all of us, including me, not to feel it can is really it keeps it away from us. But I think paying attention to the volume of your pain when it does come up is the key. Getting curious about, why is this happening this way, and not just dismissing it as, oh, I feel that way again.
Yeah.
Because there were moments that many years earlier than when I finally decided to leave, I was stopped. I was frozen based on my own PTSD of my own many triggers in life. Whenever I would get reprimanded for anything, I would not recognize that that's a bully doing that. I kept internalizing it. And that's where, you can really heat yourself up and hurt yourself. I mean, unfortunately, many people believe what they're being told and don't see that there's any way to fix it, or they're too afraid to be known. And in fact, we are all the same.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing that separates me from the person I don't want to be except choice.
I feel you and I see you. And it's such a gift to be honored to be here and witnessing your own journey and your reflection. And for people that they see you, they're going to be in all different places, and to offer them, we're not here to judge. I've given up the judgment and learning to have a very self-compassionate voice. Kristen Neff's work was life-changing for me, and she talks about self-worth. If grounded on self-compassion, that's stable. But where if we have this achievement-based identity, then it's self-esteem and it's fleeting and it's all over. And I wanted to be grounded and to see what mattered. And your value of connection and belonging is what I've learned over the years is when we are our authentic self, showcasing the full spectrum of life, our imperfections, our vulnerability. And we mentioned with boundaries before, because if we're vulnerable in places that are aspects where we haven't healed or honored, we might be re-traumatized, and it could result in worsening of our condition and of our state. But if we are at a point where we're sharing something in a space where we are compassionately supported, we can feel more whole and held and to release that guilt and that shame. And so I say this as an invitation for people to say, we're here to meet you, the audience, where you're at, and to help them to start to release some of those things that are holding them back, so much of that self-critical voice, the things that they feel so ashamed of. I think one of the biggest disservices in medicine and in our society is a stigmatization of anything, of a coping skill, of a mental health condition, which often is pathologized when it's a very normal response to the circumstances of living out of alignment, of not honoring your basic needs. And even if it's something biological, there's reasons, like, what value does it have to place blame and shame on that person? And when you get to a point where you can love yourself, we can better see where we're being abused and say, I'm no longer tolerating this. And it's painful because we could have, seen that we never had to accept that. But if we weren't given love from the beginning, it might be this new skill we have to learn and say, why does this feel uncomfortable? Because when people haven't gotten love early and start to get it, and I'll share from my own experience, is that felt wrong. Just like setting boundaries feels wrong. Speaking up feels wrong because it's uncomfortable, because we've been socialized to believe that we're not deserving of it, that we shouldn't be taking up space. So if things don't feel right, we have the opportunity to ask ourselves, what's going on inside? Why doesn't feel this right? Where am I getting these lessons from? How is it serving me? Who is it serving? And what do I want to let go of with that awareness? And what do I want to bring more of into my life? How does that land for you as I reflect on that?
No, I hear you. I think these concepts, like when people would say to me, just love yourself more, I really didn't know what they were talking about. I really was not, I still am somewhat defensive and always not sure. When it comes to self-love, I can see that the way I speak today has a different foundation from the way I spoke 10 years ago. So there's something that is buoying up my entire person. I think it's not all or nothing. I think that there's a continuum. And again, it's created. And nothing that happens right now can't change now and now and now. Every moment that I live is a new opportunity for me to find a new part of myself. And for me, I pay a lot of attention to the volume of what makes me uncomfortable. If someone makes me uncomfortable, and all of that is about me. Really, I've learned and trained myself to understand me. I may not be able to fix it or correct it, but I get curious about it and I no longer beat myself up over it. Even when someone else shows me a boundary and I feel something,
Mm-hmm.
I used to, well, at times it can trigger different things. But at the end, understanding that each person is doing what they are doing for the best for themselves, and you can do what's best for you too,
Mm-hmm.
is choices. So I've developed strategies sort of to help me see how I could feel better about that. And I've shown myself that showing more love and more understanding makes a difference. I mean, I have a daughter. When she was, she's now 24. When she was 12, I would not get why she's doing certain things. You're not doing that right, or that's wrong. I've come to understand much more, thank goodness, about each of us. Now I can see that's, at 12, this is the way she was operating. That's her experience, and developing her for her own experiences. Now my understanding of what I'm doing as a mom, not only showing and supporting, but leaving the space to grow and not crowd or convince or fix or otherwise try to mold the way it is. So I the trigger about, you just have to love yourself more is actually in this practice.
Mm-hmm.
That is, for me, the act of love is that curiosity and the pause, the ability to let the love in and understand. Again, I constantly tell myself, I'm doing the best I can. I tell myself that probably 3 or 4 times a day. When something comes up, it's in a blind spot. It'll come right out in the front, no matter how guru you think you are. I'm doing the best I can with this now. What could make it better? Or why is that? Where does that bias come from? You know, and getting more curious about and asking questions and being with it, being with in the company of others, allowing that discomfort to be part of my everyday experience. I feel very blessed. Just saying that, I'm very grateful at the end of the day that this is who this is coming out of your mouth, Marlena, is incredible, because I was rebellious. I was defiant. No way were you going to tell me what to do. This isn't happening. The person I am today has understood. Give me more. Tell me more. What? I want to hear that again. I'm curious, and I'm more present to all, much more in life, rather than closing down just the section I could take. And that, I'm hoping for myself, that percolates all the way up and down. That each person, if we were all in this sort of pinball machine of this love, there'd be a lot more room to come to the right strategy for many people, rather than serving just one small sector.
This is showcasing what's important to you, what's meaningful for you, and the evolution and life lessons. So I'm grateful that you shared. And to kind of circle and on this high value, we talk a lot about getting to know ourselves, but every time you delivered it, it was part of this greater community. It was by getting to know myself and coming from a place of love. And I saw it in your body language. It was expansile. It was open. It was different from when you were explaining when you were, rebellious and kind of limiting. And what we painted when it comes to the silo and the competitive nature of medicine, like you talked about, that's not the healing path for any of us. So I'm curious, when it comes, I share that perception that we're all interconnected and that this siloing is making us very unwell. You talked about your value of connection and belonging. Can you share why that's so important?
I can see that the way I feel when I'm loved, my capacity to do amazing things for long periods of time without seeming to be tired by any of it, it makes light time of the work. For some reason, there's an energy in and of itself to belonging and believing that no matter what you do, you're in a community moving forward. That doesn't mean that I have to have the right answer. It means that I'm supported through my entire journey, because I don't think any of us makes it alone. It's very lonely to be in transformation all by yourself without having the community of others. I think that is where life is. It's in the witness to another. I mean, there's that famous thing, if a tree falls in the forest, does anyone hear it? And it's not really relevant if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, because no one hears it. But the difference in humans is that we are in front of each other. And when I see someone who could say, let me think about that again. I don't have that thinking right. Let me take another stab at that. That allows for a better outcome. I've been in a situation where someone may point out a mistake I've made. a younger me would have been like, oh no, that's this is the way it is. This is what, I might not even see the mistake. I might have just kept thinking I was right. But the ability to pause and be like, well, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Let me look at that again. Because at the end of the day, I care about getting the answer that's best for the patient and removing myself out of it. The community itself can heal each other, where no one of us, every single one of us is going to make mistakes or maybe not have the best judgment on something or maybe be distracted by something. That all happens. But being with each other allows for the best outcomes for all of us. And the only thing it takes might be to say, let me think about that. I didn't notice that. Or let me ask a question about that. Why does that make this better? And I found that the more that I know as a teacher, when a student now asks me that, I really learn more each time. And that's the benefit of learning communities in general.
Yeah.
Not only the student, but the teacher, the up and down, side to side learning all around. This isn't the traditional medicine where you're taught. Remember, there would be a theater and everybody would be watching the guru do magic or her magic. And that would be the way it is. And you would never tell, oh, but maybe you should approach it from a different way. No.
Yep.
That's still deeply ingrained in medicine.
Oh yeah.
Deeply ingrained in most systems. And we could talk about like that doesn't matter, but it does matter because the ability to puncture the way it is with possibilities of the way it could be is what forward progress is all about. And it's in your own mental status. This is your own prison.
Yes.
And the only way I can think about it is, never think what you're thinking is the way it is for very long because it changes in a heartbeat. I mean, I thought as a child, I was a worthless nothing. I was a little, I was not contributing anything to society, doing drugs, doing lots of bad things. I never thought in a million years I'd be sitting in front of a view box trying to help people keep their toes. That wasn't the way, so never say never. Like life can be whatever you choose it to be and put the time towards it. And you do have the time. You have the time.
And you healing out loud, it's been fascinating to me with who's come into my life I've shared my own story and I anticipate this either has happened to you or will, is that growing up, I felt I was a worthless piece of shit. That those are the words that are in my brain. Worthless piece of shit. And I spent my whole life trying to believe or trying to create outward perceptions that was not true. Always achieving, always doing more. And I felt less and less valuable because I had no self-perception. So I'm reading a lot of books about how, if you abandon yourself early in development and you didn't develop a self-perception, for me, it's not even getting back to who I was. This is kind of reclaiming my sense of self and creating my sense of self now. But because you related and you have spent this time challenging that and done all this work in your own life and all this really hard, you have faced these aspects that are, I anticipate, so deeply painful. That pain and that empathy and can see people. We often hear that we can only meet people where we're willing to meet ourselves.
Yes.
You've shared in our discussion how deeply you have met yourself.
Yes.
And how many people that you can help walk on their own journey back home to themselves, to reclaim their own narratives, to know that they are worthy, that they are valuable, that the things that we were offered early on don't need to be true. And even the thoughts that we think are true in this moment deserve to be challenged.
Definitely. Definitely. I cannot tell you the framework of the way your thoughts are just thoughts that you've created as the way it is and their stories. It's very hard to wrap your head around it. Every day I still deprocess my flawed beliefs that this is the way it is. And getting to the childhood, I hear you. My parents had a hoarding disorder and it was a big dirty secret, that it was so dirty that I never wanted anyone to know that's where it came from. So I spent most of my life, even as a doctor, wondering, in fact, I would blow dry my hair straight so I could look like everybody else because curls were not, they were a big source of bullying in my early life. And I wanted to be what everyone said is the perfect thing. Whatever that's to be, I wanted it. But I think we all struggle with that. And I still struggle with it. Like I said, it's something of an everyday, but once you start to get into the idea that maybe you're not telling yourself the truth, maybe you don't know everything. I mean, it's easy to say, but it's another whole thing when you actually own it. You don't know everything, and to rework those circuits takes a constant, consistent work and practice. There is no one time that you get to take a week off of your life, of yourself. I love it. I think I'm just gonna do that. I'm just gonna take it easy. No, you're just distracting yourself till it comes back again.
Mm-hmm.
The work in life is to get it boring, get it into a practice where, things are just regular, that you're just sort of, creating on a regular basis. And then it's just, that's the everyday I'm looking for, where it's a regular practice to love and be loved and embrace others and have that trust that everywhere around you is that same emotional support. That, of course, there's things in life that we can't change, and having that support around you like a warm blanket, that I never felt that kind of peace and comfort inside me as a child, is what I want, not only for myself, but for everyone around me, everyone and anyone, just to have a taste that it can be that way and help me keep what I have for myself too.
Yeah. And what you were mentioning is a concept, the beginner's mind, was so freeing to me. As we're taught in medicine, we have to know it before we learned it. And have all this condescending pimping and whatnot, and just criticized for not knowing. And if we can just allow ourselves to accept what you just stated as truth, quote unquote truth. I have a topic on this channel that will be coming out in the near future, is how do you know you know? It was a question I was asked as a prompt in one of my marriage and family therapy discussions. And it's interesting. How do we know we know? And what could life look like if we maintain a beginner's mind and be open to being wrong?
In medicine, I highly suggest that that's what you enter. I teach doctors, and I'm teaching doctors who are already doctors. So the questions they're asking are cutting edge. They're really where the rubber meets the road. And when I don't know, I've trained myself so well now. I say that. Let's take a look at this. Let's go here with that. This is where this reminds me of this. And what do you think? And what do you think is a huge part of that? Anybody can see what's going on. What do you think? This will add to the whole mix. This doesn't mean there's a hierarchical structure where only the top guy gets to tell you the way it is. No, there's a way a medical student can see what the senior surgeon can't see. That part is important. But I think being able to percolate in different viewpoints, finding a way that you regularly can check in and get that without taking it personally. You must get out of your own way. It's been hard for me as an overachiever and someone who knows everything at every time, because that's what it took to keep my young mental status tight. But I no longer am that child, and I am here now. And I think in medicine, when we get into the business of medicine early on, we're still developing children. Many of us have postponed most of our lives to get through the schooling, through all the rigors, and we still don't know ourselves. So there's a lot of this tight thought about, I need to know everything all the time. And you actually convince yourself you do, because that's how you get your grades, right?
Yeah.
That's where you get your dean's letter, what people thought of you.
Yes.
But
yes.
I think moving into the point where, what is a good job for me? Like, so I learned that in drug rehab, I would have to walk, we would have jobs in the house. The job that no one liked was the dishes, cooking for a lot of people and then having to clean these dishes. But I knew that a clean dish is when you could feel the bottom, you could feel that scrape of the end of it. And I think we all know that if we have soap, if we're lucky to have that, we all know what a clean pot feels like. When you've done a good job. And that doesn't mean do a good job till you're exhausted and have no energy and haven't eaten. It's, did you do what you can do for today? And that requires tons of self-discovery and understanding and compassion, because there's a time to work and there's a time to rest. There's a time to love, like, you know, the song, like there's a time for everything, but it's not 60 hours in a row, which I've done. Like
Yeah.
I've done that regularly in
Yeah.
different parts of my life. I would go into work on a Friday and not come out till Monday morning, working all those hours in between. And that's not healthy. And changing the systems to allow for people to live their life and do amazing things. I think that's where you see like companies like Google when they, you know, let people wear jeans on Fridays. That was like a huge revelation. I was like jealous in medicine, like, oh my God, I want to do that
Yes.
in
Yep.
different places now, but the problems are still the same. Changing the way it is every day, shaking it up and allowing it to be different, as long as it doesn't take away another person's rights or encroach on another person's, you know, freedom. I think everything's game, you know, in that area of learning how to love yourself and do the best you can. I think the capacity to be well is limitless once you start allowing that to be. And that, you know, the only thing you might disrupt is the insurance companies and the strategy for Medicare reimbursement. I mean, and that needs to be disrupted. I don't want to be the one to tell anyone, but there are only few people who are actually making money on this game.
Yeah.
And if money was the reason why we do it, then most people are not satisfied in medicine, not with your health, wellness, or the profit margin. So, you know, when you think about it, we are making money because people are not well. And it's big business, or I can give a culprit or some kind of bad guy out there wants to keep it that way because you only get reimbursed when something bad happens and we fix it. What if you got reimbursed? And I know it sounds flaky, but because it turned out well.
Yeah. Or
That's
you
where the
prevented
money,
it.
the,
Yes. Yeah. And what I heard you say is not only have you been able to identify these problems, you were saying, I will no longer tolerate that. And you have created, as an example, you know, you did your 1099. You said, I can no longer be part of this. I'm going to continue medicine on my terms in the way that is aligned with my values so that I can be well for the patients and show up whole for the patients because I owe myself that and the patients that. You know, there were so many takeaways that I could share, but I want to hear from you. What are some main takeaways that you want the audience to have from our conversation today?
thank you first for contributing. I'm assuming most of the people watching this are on some level looking for transformation in the medical world and in this place. And there are things that you can learn, strategies, easy strategies that you can really just move in right tomorrow, like how to feed yourself, how to put in real breaks in your schedule, and how to get time management. Those are the basics that can lead you down the pathway of really putting in your calendar specific times that you're going to handle your mental health, just like you're going to make it for the doctor. I personally believe there should be some, or could be some type of strategy that you are getting outside help to help you see your blind spots. I don't think that it's that left to my own devices, I would have channeled back into this. I really needed to go and seek different ideas and have some help with that, whether those be transformational groups or ACOA or a 12-step program or any of those. There are a myriad of confidential ways that you can figure out why you're not happy, get curious, and get something for yourself. I don't think you are alone. If you ever feel in medicine that you're alone, just start talking to someone about how you really feel. The honesty that you seek can come as easily as you willing to share what it is that you're bothered by. I guarantee you, you're never alone. You're never alone. And I think one of the biggest things that has helped me is communication. I wanted to say fuck it for a lot of times, or you need, you know, like you need to figure out where it is that, you know, that things are really bothering you. So listening to yourself and not just going with the flow, start to, even if you're not going to do anything about it today, start to record it somewhere, a journal, start to get it out of you onto the plate. I think once you start doing that, you're helping yourself in a million ways not to hurt yourself. Just keeping it to myself, I was frozen and shut down and sick. I could feel it and could not do anything more but say, I'm really depressed, and just stayed there, frozen, tight, and shut down. It was love and a little bit of movement that will move you into something else, don't be afraid to see what's there because it's you there. And there's nothing you can say that can ruin your current strategy or whatever it is that whatever places or pieces you want to keep, you can still have all of that. No one's going to make you do anything. But don't be afraid to give yourself a chance to open up the door and see what's out there. You know, if I would have stayed where I was, I would have been dead by now. I stayed frozen in a system for close to 20 years with all that I know and all I'm sharing. And I just kept trying to do better, to do more work, to do more papers, more research. And I did all of those things and still was shut down. I think the honesty that one has to have with himself has to be rigorous and put yourself through self-inventory. I can't say it enough. Take a look at your life from 0 to 10. What area don't you like? What would it take to be the 10? Just give yourself a second. Don't show it to anybody. Just give yourself a second. What I tell my kids is go into the shower and tell yourself, just between you and the water, can you be honest? And I'm sure they struggle with that because it's so hard to tell one on yourself because that means you might have to address it. And that can be very hard when because there's a payoff to keeping it the way it used to be.
Yeah.
It seemed there's a payoff that's bigger than what you've got now. But I found in my experience of walking through the payoff that actually the next payoff can be double that, 10 times that. There is no limit, whether it's money or things. There's no limit to what you're capable of. And I've seen that. But that idea alone can keep you frozen. So whatever it takes to unfreeze the way you're thinking about things today, to shake it up a little bit and see what's bothering you, explore that small path, maybe just the thing that helps you feel better for a lot of other areas. You actually don't need to fix every single thing in your life to actually feel better. You could just be with it. That's probably the biggest thing. There's not a whole lot different about me. I'm still this little Marlena that was always trekking through life. It's just a love of more areas of myself. I guess that's what the self-love is all about. I didn't know all those people inside also needed to be loved too. So now I'm getting them all on board. The family's going on a trip.
It's so beautiful. Well, I could talk to you forever. I just appreciate
Likewise.
this time so much. And I know other people want to stay connected with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, Dr.Locomotion on Instagram is a constant place where I share a lot of the art that I do and a lot of the message that I'm speaking with. And you're welcome to contact me through there. My email address, marlenajbara@gmail.com. Always willing to talk to someone or start a dialogue or share anything that I can do to get people in any direction that works for you. And just grateful for your listening of me and reach out. I'm happy to share my experience and love to hear yours.
Yes, I would love to hear the audience questions, reflections, and takeaways down in the comments below. Of course, I will share them with Marlena. And if you would come back on, I'm sure we could have many more discussions to come.
Anytime. Thank you, Jillian. I'm grateful for the work that you do in the area of wellness. This is so important and more, please. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. You're truly living it to give it. So for the audience, thank you so much for being here. We hope to hear from you. And until next time.